So you're thinking about becoming a university research assistant.
Yeah, looks like it. And you've got some interesting material here.
Definitely. A university research assistant, it's not something I'd thought about before, but it's fascinating.
It really is. You've been looking at this RoleCatcher guide.
I have. It's really got me thinking. Career guide. University research assistant gets right into it.
It does, doesn't it? And one of the things that jumped out at me is how it kind of breaks down this myth of the assistant.
Right. Like when I hear assistant, I picture someone fetching coffee. Not exactly glamorous.
Exactly. But this guide emphasizes how assistant in this context can be misleading.
Yeah, it seems like it can be a much more involved role than you might initially think.
Like they even use this phrase, what was it? Being in the trenches of knowledge creation.
Wow, that definitely paints a different picture. It's not just about supporting someone else's research, it's about actively contributing to the academic world.
Exactly. And they make it clear that being a research assistant can involve a ton of different responsibilities depending on the lab, the university, the whole deal.
Makes sense. It's not going to be the same in every single situation. Okay, so it's more hands-on than just like filing papers for a professor. But I'm guessing it's not all sunshine and roses either, right?
Well, the guide is honest about the downsides too, like the job insecurity, especially when you're first starting out.
Ah, that makes sense. Academia isn't exactly known for its job security, is it?
Not really. And then there's the hours, like those long, crazy hours that seem to be a rite of passage in academia.
Yeah, I've heard stories about researchers practically living in their labs. The guide doesn't shy away from that either. It even talks about how research, especially in a university setting, can often be more about passion than a big paycheck.
It's true. And the guide links those long hours to the pressure of securing funding. It makes sense. You need funding to actually do the research.
Absolutely. But it's interesting, the guide also talks about how it's not just about having the right degree for this role. Like, you need more than just book smarts.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where I thought things got really interesting, especially thinking about you and your background. The guide explicitly mentions adaptability, being able to adjust when things don't go as planned, which, let's face it, is like Research 101.
Right. In my field, you're constantly hitting roadblocks, unexpected data anomalies, or even just navigating the IRB approval process can be a challenge.
Exactly. And the guide argues that these are skills you can hone as a research assistant that becomes super valuable no matter where you go from there.
So it's like you're building this toolkit, not just of knowledge, but of these essential skills that can be applied to so many different fields.
Exactly. It's like, remember back in the day when it was all about memorizing facts?
Oh, yeah, I remember those days.
The guide is saying those days are gone. You need more. You need to apply those facts, communicate why they matter, and be able to navigate the unpredictable world of research.
And speaking of navigating, one thing I found really interesting was how the guide presented the different career paths for research assistants. It's not always about becoming a professor, is it?
That's what I thought. It's not just one straight path. It's more like a launching pad.
I love that analogy because the guide emphasizes that those research skills you gain are transferable to other fields.
Right. It even had this example of a former research assistant who ended up in a completely different field, like marketing of all things.
Yeah.
Apparently, their experience analyzing data and spotting trends in the lab translated perfectly to understanding, like, consumer behavior or something.
Wow, who knew? So it's not just for aspiring academics, that's for sure. But you know what keeps popping up?
What's that?
RoleCatcher. They're really positioning themselves as the resource for anyone serious about this research assistant path. It's like every other paragraph mentions them.
It's true. They're definitely not being subtle about it. So you've actually been checking out some of their features, haven't you? What do you think so far?
I have to admit, their platform seems really comprehensive. They have that tool that analyzes your CV. They claim it can get you past the automated systems universities use. And their database of employers is amazing. It's like a global directory of every research institution and company out there. Honestly, it's a lot to take in. It's like, where do you even start?
I know, right? And then they have all those interview prep resources, thousands of potential interview questions organized by skill level. It's like they're trying to give you a secret weapon.
It's almost like too good to be true.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Even when a tool like RoleCatcher seems amazing, we still need to think critically. Like, don't just take their word for it. Evaluate, see if it actually fits with what you want to achieve.
You're right. Don't believe everything you read online, right? It's good to use these resources, but it's our job to figure out if their claims actually, hold up.
100%. And that actually makes me think about something else from this RoleCatcher guide. It does a great job of explaining, like the what of being a research assistant.
Mm.
The tasks, the skills, the possible career paths, it's all there. But it doesn't really get into the why so much, you know?
That's true. We've talked about what the role is, but what about the motivation behind it all? Like, what makes someone want to do this work in the first place?
And for you, I think that's a really important question. What are you most passionate about? What are the big questions you'd want to explore through research?
It's like finding your academic North Star, right? That thing that keeps you going, even when experiments fail or you're stuck in the lab at 3 a.m.
Exactly. The guide does touch on how competitive academia can be, and I
Yeah.
think that's where passion becomes essential. It's not just about the research itself, it's also about navigating departmental politics, getting that funding, and building those important relationships in your field.
So it's not enough to be brilliant in the lab. You also need to be like a strategic thinker, maybe even a bit of a salesperson.
A little bit. The guide really emphasizes networking, and not just the surface level kind of networking. It's about genuinely connecting with mentors, collaborating with peers, basically finding your people within that larger research community.
That makes me think about the human side of research, the collaboration that often happens behind the scenes. It's interesting because the guide also talks about how isolating academia can be, especially at the beginning of your career.
That's why finding your people, especially those who share your passion for a particular area of research, is so crucial. Like, think about those late night brainstorming sessions, bouncing ideas off each other. That's where the magic happens.
It's about more than just what you know, it's who you know and how well you can work together. And that reminds me, the guide also talked about how research itself is changing, right?
It is. What were you thinking about?
Well, it used to be that research was this solitary thing. Like, you imagine a lone scientist in their lab working away. But it seems like things are moving towards a more collaborative model. The guide mentions interdisciplinary research becoming more and more important.
Right. So instead of everyone staying in their own lane, there's this push to work across disciplines, to collaborate with experts from different fields.
Exactly. So for someone like me, with my background in hostess area of expertise, this could be an opportunity to bring my own unique perspective to a research team.
Absolutely. And that's where your experience as a research assistant could be so valuable, because you're not just learning about a specific research area, you're developing those collaboration and communication skills that are essential no matter where your career takes you. Makes sense, right?
Totally. It's like you're building a bridge between different fields of knowledge, which is pretty exciting when you think about it.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about something the guide mentioned, mentorship. They made it sound super important, especially for someone new to the research world.
Mentorship is huge in academia. The guide really stresses that.
So why is that? What makes it so important?
Well, a good mentor can make all the difference. Think about it. They've been there, done that, and can offer insights that you wouldn't find in any textbook. They can help you navigate the sometimes confusing world of academia, refine your research questions, maybe even connect you with potential collaborators.
It's like having a seasoned guide to help you navigate those, choppy waters, someone who's already been through it all.
Exactly. And the guide stresses finding a mentor who's the right fit for you, someone who gets your research interests, who understands what you want to achieve, and who's genuinely invested in your success.
Okay, so it's not just about finding any mentor, it's about finding the right mentor for you, someone who can really champion your work.
Exactly. And they actually give some pretty good advice on how to find a mentor in the first place, like attending conferences, reaching out to researchers whose work you admire, stuff like that.
Yeah, finding the right mentor sounds like it could make or break your experience.
Totally. And, the guide even used this phrase, academic gatekeepers, talking about how senior researchers can really influence your career. It's not always just about who has the best ideas. It's also about who has the best network.
It's like that saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. Except in academia, it's probably both.
Definitely. And that's another reason why I think their focus on mentorship is so spot on.
Mm-hmm.
Because a good mentor can help you navigate all of that. Not just the research itself, but those unwritten rules of the game. You know what I mean?
Totally. It's like they're giving you a crash course in academic survival. Okay, so before we wrap up this deep dive, is there anything else from the guide that really stuck with you?
Actually, there is one more thing. And I think it might particularly resonate with you, especially considering your interest in listeners' specific field of interest.
Okay, you've got me curious. What is it?
Well, they talk about how research, at its heart, is all about pushing those boundaries, challenging assumptions, asking those what-if questions that no one else is asking. And it made me realize this applies to the everyday work of a research assistant too, not just like the big discoveries.
I see what you mean. Like, even if you're doing something that seems small, troubleshooting a technical issue in the lab or analyzing data from a new angle, it all feeds into that larger culture of asking questions and trying new things.
Precisely. It's like bringing that same curiosity and that drive to every single thing you do,
Yeah,
from the mundane stuff to those aha moments.
I love that. So, to kind of sum up everything we've talked about today, it seems like being a university research assistant is so much more than just assisting someone, right? It's about actively shaping knowledge, developing skills that go way beyond just your area of expertise, and finding those people who share your passion for research.
Yeah. And I'd add, never losing that curiosity, that drive to learn and ask those tough questions.
The journey is just as important as the destination. Well, there you have it, a deep dive into the world of university research assistants, with all its challenges and rewards. Hopefully, this gives you a better idea of what this career path is really all about and whether it's the right fit for you.
And remember, this is just the start of your exploration. That guide you found has some great resources, so use them. Talk to researchers in your field, go to those conferences, and just immerse yourself in the world of research. You never know what you might discover.